I've got questions.
Okay, so we haven't really recorded the session for a few weeks now. And I feel badly because I know that there are people that are out there that listen to the next thing. And this won't be a typical podcast today. Although I'm sure Paula has things that she'll offer, and I always ask because she's got something always for me. But maybe I'll take this opportunity to tell you what's been cooking for the last few weeks. It was a year ago, November, that somebody had heard my story and had reached out and had this idea about taking it to, some other screen, making it into a documentary or movie, whatever form that was going to be. I had been approached, and it wasn't the first one. So as time went on, half of me this season was reluctant to get involved in some of the conferences, only because they were require, a commitment and a timing, and not knowing about what vision that the universe had already planted in my head about whatever this production, whatever form it was going to take. It just kept saying, leave your schedule open. And so there were a variety of reasons why Shasta wasn't going to be a good fit for the conference. Not to say that I won't be there. I'll be there this year. It'll be toward the end of July, and I'll spend my time there. But gatherings where I was going to speak didn't seem to be as high on the priority list. Now I know why. 3 weeks ago, there was a group of 4 really talented individuals that reached out. They happened to be based in Berlin. 6 years ago, they had an idea about this storyline for a TV series that, as an element of it, featured Inner Earth. 3 years ago, these 4 women actually put this into production, put together everything they needed for a pilot series, and then 8 episodes. And at the end of the first episode is when really indications of Inner Earth and that relationship with the surface have been mentioned in all 8 episodes. Until you get to that point, here's where the door opens. This was what I knew was going to come. Didn't know how it was going to manifest, didn't know what players were going to show up. But here comes a production crew that for 3 years has been working on this project, waiting for a subject matter expert. And so when they saw some of my content, they poured over my website and the YouTubes and everything, so that they got a feel for what they thought I knew and whether that was going to resonate. Well, I can tell you that it resonated on both sides. So at the end of the first Zoom session we had, this is 2 weeks ago, they had asked me if I'd consider mentoring them for the project. And then as things progressed, I would end up as, some type of a producer on the project. There are lots of things that have folded out. So anyway, having said all that, I'm leaving for Berlin. Some of you knew that. I kept it really close to my chest for a while because I didn't know that, it was supposed to get out there in public yet. But I'll be there. I'm leaving Tuesday. I'll be there for at least 2 weeks and maybe longer to, see what the next phase of putting this together is. I've been through some of this, having been involved in Ruben Langdon and his projects and, getting ready for that particular episode. But this is different. And now we all know what this is leading up to. This isn't just, producing some other, TV show. Here is where we get to shape the narrative and help people understand what's really here already. So that, we're going to put, I see putting it into an entertaining concept to get your attention. But no, the purpose for this is to get you used to the idea that that element is actually underneath your feet, or, within the ethers, or however you want to see that other dimension that's around you that you're not aware of yet. That is one of the primary purposes of all of this. So Paula has been one of the few people who knew a little bit about this along the way. You want to share any of your reactions to any of this?
Well, first of all, it had to come to pass. Second of all, we didn't know how it was going to come to pass. But you'd been speaking of, I know that this is going to go into some video production in some way, shape, or form. I'm not sure how. I know that we had sent out with the Bigelow Institute, hey, Bigelow Institute, here's the situation. Maybe you'd be interested in it, which to me is like setting an intention, throwing it out there, doesn't not attached to the outcome, but that energy is there that I set this, I see this coming, and how is it going to come back? And then it wasn't long after that, then this came to pass in its very special, unique way that it had to. And how I feel about it is I feel it's quite delightful because it's I feel that I've heard this many times where the opportunity to get used to something comes in a way that's very gentle and benign through entertainment. But then again, can we really create outside of ourselves? There must be an element of truth in everything that we create because it comes from us, right?
I'm happy that you pointed out their perspective, so I don't want to interrupt you. Keep going.
Oh, no, yeah. That's basically it. So that everything we create is an aspect of us, and there's some kind of truth in it somewhere, some way, shape, or form. And I feel as though this truth is desiring to be birthed in a bigger way than ever before. It's been birthed in the past. We've read books on Hollow Earth and this and that going back from 1800s or maybe even before that. Who has talked about? I'm sure the greats of Greek, somebody spoke of it or something, but 1800s talking about Hollow Earth theory, and then books about it, stories on it. But now it's in the zeitgeist so much bigger than it's ever been. And to your point, we've watched shows on Prime and maybe Netflix that have alluded to it, gently guiding us into concept Middle Earth. What was it, that Lord of the Rings show that's on Prime right now? Mm-hmm. A lot of activity is going on in Middle Earth. And then that other story where that couple has that gateway from their cellar, and then it's that's inner Earth.
Yeah, Sissy Spacek, and I see the actor in my head, but that was not that far flung.
No, it's not that far flung. And, like I said, there was that movie when I was a kid. One of my favorite movies was Return to Witch Mountain, a Disney movie, which literally tells the story of the Lemurians, in a modern time way. Like, our civilization kind of was going underwater. And we are now setting up into a mountain. We're setting up new home in this mountain, and a couple of kids get lost along the way, and then they make their way back to their family in the mountain. It's kind of like, you can't make this up. So,
you mentioned at the beginning of this that, none of this creative stuff didn't come to us without some kind of inspiration. Mm-hmm. So what we want to think is fantasy. It might be in this dense realm, but in realms where we've been stepping into, that's not fantasy, that's magic. And that's what happens. And you get to control that to a degree with your intent on what you want to see. So when people remind you to be mindful of your thoughts, because that's exactly what you're going to put out there, it's going to get returned in abundance. You have control over the narrative. It totally makes sense to me now on why so many people that have had this, I'm going to call it awakening because I don't know a better word for it, but that word tends to be overused. I think there's there's another way to describe the ascension process without using those words and trying to articulate something to people that they don't understand yet. Because you and I know that we didn't understand it for the longest time. And it's just a resonance. There's not words that you can attach to that can give it enough comprehension for our physical little human brains to really wrap around what we're in the middle of and what changes are taking place right now, because it's profound. Watch the solar activity that's going on around you. I don't know what is causing it, but you can't help but be amazed by the phenomenon weather-wise that's going on the planet. I'll speak to last night. For the most part, all the snow that we've had here in this area of Minnesota, I've been in for a few months, was deep. It had all kind of receded. You could see the ground cover again. And then last night in one fell swoop, sometime after midnight, because when I went to bed, it was raining a little bit. There was 8 to 9 inches of snow that landed here. Now it looks gorgeous.
Yeah.
But holy cow, there's other energies that are at work here that we just don't understand. But we know I resonate like hell. These are all solar influenced. That's what the cause of this beginning is. And that's just Earth taking these solar jolts and metastasizing the energy in whatever way it is, because that's all that we are. We're all energetic beings. You take an energy and you expend it, and that's just a constant exchange. But here we are. So I'm excited. Normally when I know I'm traveling, I wait till the last minute to get excited about it. This is not that. I knew what was coming, and I've had a couple opportunities to meet with these women and spend some time answering their questions. And there's a whole different level of excitement on the other end. I don't know that they knew what to expect when they reached out and asked me if I'd be interested in getting involved in the project. I don't think that they expected that I would be so willing and that I would prioritize it in the way that I did. Because in my mind, this is what I'm supposed to be doing next. This is how the information gets out there on a wide scale. And when you had mentioned it, this kind of information getting out there on a more wide scale, Yaya, in a couple of transmissions we had over the summer, had mentioned that there was a way to get this message out there in a way that's never been done before to attract multiple audiences. Now, we didn't really understand exactly what they were talking about in terms of whatever energy was going to shift. But here, as you pointed out, is going to be the way for us to touch a lot of people in another way that's never been done before, to connect the dots on things that are real. And we get to help shape that narrative. Now, I know that there is almost a sacred trust in us to do that. It took me a long time to come around to the terms that I'm not really interested in influencing any other sovereign being's choices, that they help contribute to the greater good when I leave that alone and just support it. But I also know that people are going to believe the things that they want to believe. And they're looking right now for things to believe. So we have to, in the most responsible manner possible, feed them the information that they need to know in a way that will connect the dots, so that what you started to think was a fictional series that you're watching at the beginning of this in the pilot ain't fiction at all. But I'm ready to do it. I'm not afraid to say the things that need to be said. And I know that there's an audience that's going to listen to it and are hungry for it. And the rest of them are going to, make fun of it and not understand it. I'm not going to pay attention to that noise. That's not the space I'm here to hold. There are others that do that extremely well. There is a process by which we got to this point in cosmic history in the first place. And humanity had been messed with. We had been stunted in our growth along the way, but all of that has been kind of brushed away. And so there's nothing left other than for us to get our shit together and understand what power we already possess and take back control of it. And all of these things have been placed in our path because Earth's path in this regard and her horizon consciousness is in the middle of the process. It could happen as easier tomorrow as it will, 2 years from now, but that window is close. And even, the ladies I talked about this understand the sense of urgency. We're not going into a production that's going to take months. No. In our minds, this has to be ready to go in 90 days. They get it. Now, most of the groundwork's already been done. So producing the first thing is just a matter of beginning to film it. And now that they've got some I's dotted and T's crossed on the inner earth persona of the individual who's one of the protagonists, okay, now we're up and running. So stay tuned. I had debated on whether I was going to communicate while I was there in Germany. There's no way of getting around that because I hear from people every day and I can't just turn it off and go silent. I did for a couple weeks. So those of you that are going to listen to this understand why I might not be as quickly responsive because there's something else on my plate, but I don't want to ignore the tribe. I'm not the only one involved in this. When I think of Paula's and Elisa Herrera's and Sherry Divban's and Dave Wallace's, you all, Cindy, yeah, all have roles to play in this unfolding of this story. All have parts of the puzzle that you brought to the tribe that no one else can talk about and replicate. So I'm excited. I'm getting chills just sitting, listening to myself talk about it because I know what gifts every one of you already has. And now we finally see a window on where we're going to contribute that. Not quite sure what form that's going to take yet, but we're all ready to do it. And here we go. Again, as much as it looks like things have dropped into place, there's no time to waste because there's no more time. No. We're here. Yeah.
There's no more time. And you're right.
So,
more things.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say the more things that from an appearance perspective look like they're falling apart because a lot of people are kind of questioning, even the most, I would say, that would not be likely to jump on board with the Middle Earth concept. They are even saying something's going on. And there is this feeling, an uneasiness with the weather, with the banks, collapsing. And there is this uneasiness with the war situation and how that's transpiring and enhancing. So people are uneasy and they would like to have someone say, it's all going to be okay. It's okay. And there is something bigger happening that's on our side, that's working with us. And so I know that there's just going to be this pivotal time where it's going to be like, I need to get on board with the truth because the nightmare is no longer working for me. You got to start believing in the dream. At some point, the dream is the reality. Mm-hmm. Because we wouldn't have these feelings or even concepts or beliefs or visions of this dream unless there wasn't a truth in it and the reality. Yeah. And who's keeping us in the nightmare? Because the nightmare is not working. It's not scalable. It's not sustainable. And, it will destroy us if we keep believing in it.
Yeah, I spent the week going back, and my draw to Inner Earth and especially the Lemurians, it has been acute over the last week. I went back and read Aurelia Louise Jones's books again, and I went back and I read both of Diane Robbins' books again, the one about Tellus and the one about Middle Earth. Yeah, I was just, and they were good refreshers. Oh my God, there were details in there that I had forgotten that certainly helped the production team ask some questions about, what life was like for them. Yeah. All of this is happening because it's supposed to be brought into our field again so that the information's fresh. So now when we begin to tell it to everybody else, we understand it as vividly as we can. We got lots of resources. Everyone that I know that has ever resonated with the word Telos or Lemuria is waiting for the next thing. And there've been so little of it produced in video form that I think now is the time that we get to take advantage of that technology and the people that understand how to do that and take the content and start to push it out. Now, there's a certain still amount of secrecy around this because, as everyone knows, anything that gets leaked out to Hollywood will be stolen in a moment. And so there are pieces of this puzzle that we're going to be careful about kind of unfolding. But there's been a lot of intent and a lot of effort that's been put into this already. I mean, the last 3 years have been worked on this project while they've been, trying to keep themselves active. But this has been their focus too. And so it's my priority now. I know that this is what I'm supposed to do next. So I'm going to Berlin with the idea that I was going to go there originally for 10 to 14 days to meet with them and see what I could do. Well, I booked for 2 weeks, understanding that I may be there longer than that. And there's really nothing that prevents me from not being there. The only real commitment that I had was in Shasta just after the 4th of July, really through the end of the month. And, we'll see how all that shakes out. So those are the only 2 concrete plans I have. And I'm scheduling my time in Shasta already now for people that wanted me to take them on sacred tours. And, I've already got some of that on my plate. We'll see how quickly that fills up. But I think as it gets closer to the date, I'm going to have less and less time to myself when I get there. And that's okay. I love spending my time in Shasta when I'm there. And even if there's nothing else to do, but just have my butt on the dirt there somehow, that's all it needs to be. So we'll see how all that shakes out. But I thought today I would put at least this down. I've never really acted like the host of a podcast and really asked questions and interviewed anybody. That was never meant what this was meant to be. It was always going to be an exchange for people in the tribe that was showing up. And then, these nuggets would be left behind for us to, if we couldn't make it today, we would know where to find the content. So today is the day. We'll see how this shakes out when I get to a place where I'm 7 hours difference. Yeah, maybe there'll be late morning and it'll be early more evening for me once I hit to Berlin, because that seems to be the time claim. When it's 11 noon my time here, I speak to them and it's like 7 o'clock in the evening with them. So anyway, stay tuned, gang. As soon as there's more exciting information, I will begin to share more of it now. The affirmation cards are at the printers. We're still kind of fussing over the design for the tray box. It's really slick. And as soon as that's done, and I'm sure that this one goes off without a hitch, then the other 3 will go into production. And they take a couple weeks to get them, but wow, what I've seen is going to be amazing. And the feedback I've been getting on them every day, it's heartwarming. And I would like to take more ownership over it. And I will to a degree, but all that was divinely inspired. And those weren't meant to be, they didn't start out to be affirmation cards. Everyone that's seen those images was activated in some way. And that was what the purpose for having these, so that more of them could be held in someone's hand. That's why the deck of cards made sense. Everything kind of evolved after we put a book together, and that was way more amazing than I thought. But none of these things the week before I actually put them into production were even ideas I had in my head. So look what Spirit's doing to help people get activated again. If seeing these pictures is doing it, then great, I've done my part. I just need to get them out there. So do you have anything that you wish to close with today?
Well, I think I think it's amazing, and maybe, and it's an invitation for all of us. I think about these women that started this concept 6 years ago. It must have been some kind of internal pull that they were just went with, right? Because you say to yourself, 6 years ago, I don't know if I have a lot of rationale or justification for starting this project, not knowing what was going to be coming many years later would be you actually taking a tour of Talos, right? And so you have to have, if you have a pull inside, I would say it's an invitation to myself and others, go with it. You're not going to know how it's going to play out. But if you go with it, you can watch the magic come and say, my gosh. Because I know for myself last summer when I started receiving information about Talos from a telepathic perspective, I thought, there's got to be me and 5 other people in the world that, that know about this. No, there's hundreds of thousands. And then I would have never thought in a million years that I would have been casually watching Gaia one evening and suggested for you, Lowell Johnson, Journey into Talos. But I followed my gut instinct to start writing the book and start talking about Talos without any justification or even support for that. And then all of a sudden the support
shows up.
You have to act first, and then it'll come back in spades.
That's so true.
And what kind of journey has this been for you? Has it been all buds and roses? Has it been a little bit confusing? Has it been frustrating sometimes? I think people want to know, because we're definitely on a path to wonder, but we got to kind of say, what is it like? Is it always just perfect for you?
No, it doesn't I don't let it reach the level of frustration or something negative. That is a mindful control that I intentionally make sure that whatever I'm going to emit, whether it's words or even just thoughts, that they are as high a vibration as they can be. That's the space I know I'm supposed to hold. And when I keep my vibration high, here, and the things I get to see and experience are the results of that. My proof, I'm an example for you to look at. There's a guy that's figured out, in whatever way, whatever assistance came my way as well, because I didn't figure all this out on my own, put me in a place where I can sense these things. And so when I talk about them as truth, I've experienced them. Not I've experienced them. I do experience them. Current, real time. And the news is so can all of you. We're no different in our makeup than anybody else in our humanity. Humans have the ability to connect in this way if you set the stage for yourself to do it. Now, whatever influence came from outside myself to kind of snap me into this information I'd already possessed and just take command of it again, I'm grateful for whatever it is, but everyone's is going to come that way. It's not going to be me saying, here's the 1, 2, 3 that I found, and everybody gets to go there. Where that's not it. And it's all because we're individual sovereign beings with our own role to play on all of this.
You have to stay the course. Just stay the course.
Yeah.
Because 6 years they've been working on this. 6 years, and now they're coming into this. They met you. They feel, okay, really, this is all coming together. But you have to, I say this for myself as much as anybody else. I have to stay the course, even though there's a lot of challenges along the way. Stay the course and have the trust.
Yeah, when I reread those books, all the indications, and I think Aurelia's books were like published in 2004, and Diane's books not too long after that. They were indicating that
it was 1992, right?
Oh, yeah, you're probably right. It's been a long time. The idea that communication between the Lemurians and us they documented back then. And when the time came right, they were going to make themselves known and certain people would be invited in. Well, here, 2 years ago, that's exactly what happened with me. And I never suggested for a moment, I wouldn't even to this day, that I was going to be the only emissary. No, there'll be many of us that are going to be called. All of us are going to be able to figure out where the portals are, and they're not going to be difficult to find. It wasn't meant to be like that. And I forgot, and I'll say this again because I was mentioning it the other day. After I had read these books, I keep thinking about all of us that want to go to Telos. Never mind how many Lemurians have been waiting to come back to the surface. They're waiting with just as much excitement and anticipation as we are to see their realms. But they've stayed silent and quiet for a while. And when I read the paragraph, and I think it was Aurelia's book, that indicated the reasons why they didn't make themselves known for so long now, is that they needed to isolate themselves from the negativity on the surface. And once they could focus everything on their evolution. And that's how they got where they got. That's where their spiritual metaphysical evolution has not been interrupted like ours has been. And they were going to protect themselves from any outside influence to screw with that field. And so successfully they have. Now they've begun to communicate with us in ways that we can begin to understand who they are, what they have to offer, and what this reintegration is going to look like and what we can expect, because it's sooner than we expect. I've been saying it for months now, but every time something happens and another synchronicity lines up, I can tell you with great certainty that the things that I know are real and they're about to take place soon. So whatever you need to do to get yourself in a vibratory level that matches what's around you already, all I can tell you is get there. Wipe out whatever white noise takes your attention away from you to start to figure out these things. Because I sense, I'm pretty safe saying that everyone has had something that they really couldn't understand, some energy that shifted or some vision I thought I had that just seemed too real to ignore, but I didn't know what it was. I'm here to give some form to that for you in ways that, we didn't understand what it was, but there are enough of us that are beginning to experience these things that there's probably somebody else in the tribe that's had a very similar experience that can help you. And we're all still trying to unpack all the things that have happened to us. In this density, we weren't granted all the things that we're becoming aware of now, so that we could kind of just became part of who we were over these decades. No, all of this remembrance has taken place in a very narrow amount of time here recently. And when I hear from others that I'm not the only one, something bigger is shifting and preparing. That's how I see it.
And I do feel, and let me know what you think of this. Just as they had to sort of sequester themselves in to protect themselves from the negative vibrations or lower vibrations, would you agree that Earth herself now is saying everybody now needs to get on board with higher vibration? Because
yes, we
need to support a higher quality of life for the entire planet. All the beings, the fairies, the gnomes, the sprites, the water, the flora, the fauna, the animals, everybody needs to experience that. And how do you think people, because, there's everybody's a good person, but let's face it, there's a lot of generational trauma that people have in their pain body. And how do you think it's going to go in terms of people understanding that they have to release that pain body to be allowed to the next level that we're reaching?
Well, part of that energetic, how do I want to call it? Distortion had been generational. It took me a while to understand that I was carrying karma that wasn't mine, but I was carrying it nonetheless. Something my guides had communicated at the end of the month of January, after we all felt this shift that had taken place right around the first of the year, that there were lots of residual effects from that, not the least of which was this generational karmic stuff that we've been carried. Somehow, whatever light we've been receiving dissolved that in areas that people that had no idea they were carrying it just got relief. Everyone I've spoken to has felt lighter. And it wasn't all because, their awakening has increased. Yes, some did, but many others didn't understand what the energy shift was about. Well, when I'd heard that, I went, every human that had been carrying karmic loads had been somehow released. And that was to help us ascend again in ways that, we didn't have control over, or what we weren't aware of, that we're getting divine help to do things that we don't understand are preparing us for what's next on the evolution ladder. We're in an evolutionary pattern. And so are the Lemurians and Telos. That was why they needed to isolate themselves. They didn't want to disturb their evolution. They are well along. And so the technologies that they've got, that they've promised, they've been hanging on to for a while. There was a period decades ago when they would switch in and out of third to fifth density. Back in the 40s and the 30s, and prior to that, the world wasn't what it is now. So stupidly, dangerously divisive and dualistic. And so, when that started to rear its head a little bit more, that's when they just disappeared into their places until the rest of the world was ready for them. But you had started to talk about some of the others, fairies and elves and sprites and that kind of influence. I had to be reminded by going back to those books that the relationship between all the elementals and the Lemurians has been intact for a long time. And the other reason why all of these elementals are now seem to be coming back into our field is because they sense it's time for them to step up and help Gaia. Not that they've ever been gone, but now they understand the urgency of what preparation is taking place, and they are just as real as everything else is. If you don't believe that there's fairies, I have taken pictures of them. Believe what you want, that's there. Before I can take you to a place with dragons and unicorns, that may sound like fantasy, and you're going to turn this off if you've never heard me speak before and go, that guy's out of his mind. There are things in other realms that you just can't understand yet.
No,
and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I've had evidence. I've had because I do public demonstration readings, right? Intuitive readings and mediumship readings, where strangers will come and I will get a piece of evidence. And this one piece of evidence came in. It was, I know somebody in the room has fashioned a wonderful fairy garden for themselves. And who is this? And sure enough, this lady raised her hand and said, yeah, I had a fairy garden, and but she'd moved and she hadn't set up a new fairy garden yet. And the fairies were telling her, please set up a second fairy garden. We want to come and we love the garden that you made for us, and please make another one.
Yeah.
Well, how could I have known that unless they were communicating with me? So it's not just loved ones that has passed to the other side or someone's soul that connects with me. I'm now getting information from crystals and sprites and trees, speaking to people like, oh, I know this tree in your backyard is so grateful that you take such good care of it. And they're like, oh yeah, I do have a tree and I take good care of it and I love it. So everything, I think our consciousness is expanding so that we can even receive information from these beings, and they are waking up and wanting to communicate with us. And one time I was walking my dog, I don't know if I shared it with you or not, but saw some things in the sky and started videotaping and saw two round ball Merkabas that turned into angels, shapes of angels. So they're coming. I mean, they want to communicate with us, And so the invitation is to expand your consciousness, let go of the trauma, and get on this wild ride with us. Get on the spaceship with us.
All right. Any last thoughts?
I think that's it. I'm so excited for you going to Berlin.
My whole life, like I explained before, I didn't really get excited about trips. When they got close, then I would focus on what they're going to be. But this is a whole different thing. This isn't just, I'm not going there as a tourist, although I want to see parts of Berlin because I don't, no sense going all the way there and not taking advantage of it. And I've been given a lot of thought over the last few days. As I grew up, and I grew up with my patriarchal grandparents. When my dad got divorced, we moved in with his parents, and I lived there for 11 years. So when I think of my heritage, I always think of the Scandinavian side of things because Grandpa and Grandma both came from Sweden when they were young. The other side of me, my maternal side, are Weisses. They're all German. And so it makes me wonder, there's maybe more than one reason why I'm going to Berlin. And it may be to find out more about what time I had, maybe my ancestors had spent there. So stay tuned, we'll see.
And isn't it wonderful that Berlin was the city where the wall fell, signifying the end of the Cold War? And
Yes.
Isn't that why they kind of more sequestered in, was because of the nuclear detonation? After that, things really sequestered in. And so,
Yes.
yeah, the location where the wall fell, where we consider the Cold War being ending, that's where you're going to film this. There's no accident in the road.
No, there's divine timing. I just get to sit back and watch it. Yeah, I guess when you asked me earlier if parts of it gets unsettling, it's the waiting that gets unsettling. The rest of it's always good, and the tribe that showed up has been really wonderful support. But I enjoy quiet and solitude. I seek that out because that's where I really get to connect to all of this other stuff when I'm not disturbed by anything else around me. And now my guides keep telling me that's your job. Get everyone else as close to the same level as you are. Help them whatever way that you can. That's your job right now. And I don't know that, like I said, I don't have a 1, 2, 3 formula for that. It just seems like the more time I spend around other people that have had this extraordinary information and experiences, the more clarity it brings to the whole situation when we get to look at it all together. So, all right. Well, enjoy the rest of your weekend. And I'll see you soon. Okay.
Sounds good. All right.
Okay.